Notre Dame travels to Coral Gables, sunny, beautiful Florida, Miami, Florida at that on a Sunday night. We got a little Sunday night football action and college football. Week 1, friends, 7:30 Eastern kickoff. This one's a fun one, man. Two classic, historic, big-time brands taking each other on a Sunday night, standalone. Only game at that time. I think Virginia Tech and South Carolina play Sunday midday, but this is the prime time Sunday night game, baby. Let's preview it. Let's break it down. Let's start with Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman's team. Last year, this is a team that made the national championship, had an incredible season. I understand we don't do second place trophies. We don't do participation trophies, but a lot to be proud of on that team last year, especially when you consider the the Northern Illinois blunder that took place. And, having that after beating A&M on the road, it was a head scratcher. But Notre Dame turned it all around, had an amazing end of the season, played one heck of a year. They bring 11 returning starters back. That is huge for this team. Let's start with the offense. The biggest of them all is Jeremiah Love. He will be the face of this Notre Dame offense and a rushing attack that was incredible last year. The focal point of that offense last year was their rushing attack. Mike Denbrock, offensive coordinator for Notre Dame, loves to run the football. What better guy to do it with than Jeremiah Love? He is a stud. There are Heisman opportunities, absolutely a Heisman possibility for him. The biggest help that he has 3 starting offensive linemen coming back as well. Notre Dame has never struggled in the trenches ever. They recruit extremely well. They coach very well on the offensive line. They are going to lean on that run game heavy. The reason they're going to lean on that run game heavy, because outside of those 4 guys, there are 3 starting O-linemen that come back and Jeremiah Love. That's it. Psych. Jaden Greathouse, wide receiver, is back as well. So I missed him. He's going to be a big piece. But outside of those, 5 players, quarterback is the question, is what I'm trying to get to, okay? And I'll get to Jaden Greathouse. I promise I did not forget how talented he is. But quarterback position battle. Kenny Minchie, okay, number 5 dual threat quarterback in the 2023 class, in competition with CJ Carr, the number 2 pocket passer in the 24 class. Those 2 guys are fighting for the starting position. All right. I don't know who's going to get it. I mean, to me, as of right now, the signs have been pointing to CJ Carr. But I think back to last year and how effective Riley Leonard's legs were. Now, that's not to say that CJ Carr can't run, but Kenny Minchie is a little bit more athletic, a little faster, in my opinion. So it's going to be interesting, right? With how effective Notre Dame's run game was last year and how effective I think it will be against Miami and teams this year. And that's no knock on Miami. That's just Notre Dame will be effective running the football, no matter who they play. That is their mantra, their forte. They will get it done. I don't think there's as much pressure on this quarterback battle. Okay, now let's talk about wide receiver. I mentioned Jaden Greathouse, somehow nearly forgot him, but it was almost at times last year hard not to forget the Notre Dame receiving room. Okay, very similar to Penn State, in my opinion, towards the end of the season. Now, Jaden Greathouse had some great moments in that playoff run for Notre Dame, undoubtedly. And he's by far the biggest returning production in that receiver room. But there were moments where it just felt like that receiving core didn't really exist. I didn't see as much production as I wanted to see. And again, that could be in part to how dominant Notre Dame's run game is. That absolutely makes sense. But they bring in Malachi Fields, okay? So that's going to be a big one. He comes in from Virginia, 6'4", 220-pound big body. So I really hope him having Jaden Greathouse again, seeing the success he had late in the year, I think that chemistry developed over time with these quarterbacks will prove to be beautiful for Notre Dame. This offense has a lot of weapons. Let's move to the defense, okay? Chris Ash, new DC, is in town. Al Golden is off to the NFL with the Bengals. They bring Chris Ash on. He has 6 returning starters on the defense, okay? Not bad. This was a defense that was number 3 in points per game allowed last year. All right, this was an incredible unit last year. Defense wins championships. Now, I understand they didn't win a championship, but they got there. And a lot of it was in part to how good this Notre Dame defense was, especially that secondary, which we will get to. Let's start with the defensive line. Josh Burnham returning. He comes back. He's big for that defensive line. We move to linebackers. Drake Bowen, Jalen Sneed, both back. Now let's talk about the secondary, okay? This was the focal point of that Notre Dame defense for me last year. And in my opinion, the best part of this team. Aiden Schuler at safety is back. Your 2 star corners, man, Christian Gray and Leonard Moore, those 2 guys are back, okay? Guys, this secondary was number 1 in the country in opponent completion percentage, 52%. When I say number one in opponent completion percentage, that means they allowed the worst completion percentage of all defenses in college football last year. Teams only completed, on average, 52% of passes against this Notre Dame secondary last year. Now, don't get me wrong, that defensive line deserves its flowers as well. They stepped up last year, but Notre Dame's secondary has been locked down, okay? Number 4 in opponent pass yards per game at 169 yards per game. So having those guys back in the secondary, that's going to be the biggest thing to watch for this defense. I don't think Chris Ash will have any issues considering how good that secondary is. However, Miami is an explosive offense. Let's talk about Miami. Okay, year 4 for Mario Cristobal. 5 wins in year 1, 7 wins in year 2, 10 wins in year 3. There seems to be a lot of heat on Mario Cristobal at all times. I don't, I understand the expectation at Miami is extremely high. I get that, all right? I know some people are screaming, why are they high? They've never won an ACC championship. But of course, the early 2000s, Miami was a dominant program. They want to be back at that level. And Mario Cristobal has moved them in the right direction. So some of the criticism that he receives, I understand. It's what comes with being a head coach at this level and coaching at a program as proud as Miami, but he's moving in the right direction, okay? He gets 8 returning starters back on this team. Not an incredible amount by any stretch, and there's a lot of gaps to fill for Miami. So let's go ahead. Let's start with their offense, okay? Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator, in my honest opinion, is one of the best offensive coordinators in the country, and let me tell you why I say that. Okay, friends, I understand Cam Ward was a freak, and I am super excited to watch him in the NFL, and Cam Ward deserves all the flowers, all right? But I think Shannon Dawson utilized Cam Ward so well and maximized every bit of the potential he had with guys like Xavier Restrepo and all the talent around him. Shannon Dawson deserves a ton of credit for this offense last year, all right? Number 1 in yards per game, number 1 in points per game, number 1 in yards per play, number 1 on third down percentage, the number 1 offense in college football. Undoubtedly, this offense could not miss last year. Now, they had their moments. Don't get me wrong. That's football. You play a lot of games. You're going to have your stinkers. That absolutely happens, okay? Let's talk about who Miami brings in from the transfer portal. CJ Daniels comes in at wide receiver. They get Keelan Marlin and Tony Johnson. So they add depth to a receiving room that desperately needs it, okay? They're going to have some youth with freshmen like JoJo Trader, Nikar, some of those guys. It's going to be an interesting mix, all right? When you lose your starting 4 receivers and your starting quarterback from last year, there's a lot of question marks. Now, the biggest thing is who's throwing to those wide receivers. Carson Beck. Carson Beck's had an interesting career, all right? A lot of times when I look at quarterbacks from Bama and Georgia, especially in the past years, it's hard for me to sit there when I watch the film. I see things that I kind of scratch my head. It's hard for me to look and say, are they really that good, or is it all of the talent around them that makes them better, all right? Cam Ward could go play anywhere. His raw potential will succeed. Is Carson Beck that guy? We're going to find out. And he's in a situation where he's going to have a little bit of youth, a lot of transfers plugged in. I don't know if he's going to have the same flashy weapons that Cam Ward had. All right, so he's going to have a big year. I think the tools are there for Carson Beck, undoubtedly. I just think he's going to have to play a great season if this Miami offense, and Shannon Dawson especially, wants to even remotely replicate what they had last year. Okay, in terms of stats, not Cam Ward. I'm not saying he's going to be Cam Ward. I don't think we're going to see another Cam Ward for at least a little while, all right? But Shannon Dawson is a great offensive coordinator that I trust, and I think he will put Carson Beck in a good position to succeed, all right? So let's see Mark Fletcher. Let's talk about him, okay? He's going to have to take a lot of pressure off that passing game. Miami loves to sling the ball. We know that. They're going to throw the rock a lot. But Mark Fletcher is a stud of an athlete at the running back position. If Miami can effectively run the ball, which they did last year, they weren't a terrible rushing offense. Damian Martinez had his moments. Mark Fletcher gets to have them this year. Okay, Miami does bring back a couple offensive linemen, which is big for them. So 3 offensive linemen come back. That's the only 3 starters on their offense that they get back. So that's going to be huge for them. They also bring in the number 3 portal class in general. All right, so having the amount of portal talent come in, it could be a boom, it could be a bust. We'll see. The offense will be interesting. All right, what does Carson Beck's nerves look like? Coming off an injury, A lot of new faces, a lot of new guys. At least he has a little bit of experience on the offensive line. That's going to be big. If Mark Fletcher can get going, they can ease the nerves a little bit. They're going to be playing against an extremely tough defense secondary-wise, so they're going to have to establish a run game early. Okay, let's talk about Miami's defense. New defensive coordinator, Corey Heatherman. Lance Guidry is gone. He gets fired at the end of last season. Now, here's the thing. Miami's defense wasn't great last year, but it wasn't the worst either. All right, I don't hate the fire, excuse me, and I love Corey Heatherman, excuse me. I think he's going to be great. I really do, and he's going to have a lot of talent, and Miami hauled the portal with defensive talent. Majority of their portal class was defensive-minded, defensive-sided, I should say. But I don't think Miami's defense was all to blame. When you look at the stats, categories, they're in the 30s, they're in the 70s, they're in the 50s, but they weren't abysmally bad on defense at all. All right, so I don't think all the blame could go on that. And ultimately, they won 10 games, so it's not the worst. But let's talk about what they have this year. They bring back 5 returning starters. The defensive line is going to be key, not only for this team from a season perspective, season outlook, but especially this game, okay? Playing against arguably one of the best running backs in the country and a stout offensive line, Ruben Bain. I don't know why I wanted to say Reuben Foster. Not him. Ruben Bain is back. Akeem Mesidor is back. They bring in defensive line transfer David Blay from Louisiana Tech. He is going to be big. Rated a 4-star transfer player, 6.5 sacks last year, 40 tackles. Those 3 guys are going to have to eat. They have to have a big game, no question about it. All right, let's talk about that linebacker room. Wesley Basanti is back, returning starter. He's going to be big, okay? Cornerbacks O.J. Frederick and Jadeus Richardson are back. Frederick is argued as one of the most talented corners in the country. How well does that Miami secondary look? I think if there were any blunders, really, in games last year, some of it kind of came down to that Miami secondary just slipping a little bit. Well, they bring in a lot of talent there too, okay? Xavier Lucas and Charles Brantley both come in. 2 high 4-star rated transfer portal corners coming in. They bring in safety Zechariah Poyser, Jacoby Thomas out of Tennessee. All right, this defense was number 62 in pass yards per game allowed last year, so not great. Really just a little bit above middle of the pack, but Miami loaded up on secondary athletes and defensive players in the portal. So what does Corey do on a defensive side of the ball for Miami that really needs to step up and have a big game? I think it starts with Ruben Bain in the trenches. David Blay, incoming transfer, those guys are going to have immediate success. They're going to have to stop the run, all right? If they can load the box, I trust guys like Fred Reek. They've brought in good corners, okay? I trust Miami in man coverage. And Jaden Greathouse is good, but Notre Dame is not going to blow past you. They have not proven that they just have thousands of, 1,000-yard receivers littered all across the field, all right? This game is going to be an incredible matchup, you guys. Miami needs to be careful on penalties. All right, last little nugget, 6.5 penalties per game last year. That was good for 98th in the country. A lot of them were on the defensive side of the ball. They have to clean that up. The line sits at 2.5 in this game. I could absolutely see this being a close game, okay? I don't know, man. I just think Notre Dame is a little bit more experienced. They have more returning starters, only 3 more returning starters. And Notre Dame is not a transfer portal heavy team. Miami, of course, has 19 incoming transfers this year. Number 3 portal in the class. A lot of new faces, specifically at quarterback being the biggest one of them all. So I don't know, man. I think it's going to be interesting. I think there's a lot of chess pieces to look at in this game between 2 new defensive coordinators, 2 offenses that are going to try and replicate success they had last year. This one's going to be fun. I think it's going to be sloppy, to be completely honest. I think it's going to be a lot of punting, not a lot of firework plays, in my opinion. I think this is going to be a defensive showcase, and I'm not predicting this one quite yet. But with that being said, I appreciate you guys for watching. Let me know who you think wins down in the comment section below. Drop a like. I really appreciate all your guys' support, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you, guys.